So recently I finished up a ride with, it was actually a mountain bike ride, and then we're at the bar having a good time, and I got in a little bit of a heated up conversation with a really good friend of mine, so it was fine, but the conversation was revolving around group ride etiquette. Essentially, really came down to Pacelines or not Pacelines. So in my friend's estimation, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot more showboating, I guess for lack of a better term, where people will go off the front, or they'll sit on the front for too long, or they'll come through way too hard and sort of blow up the ride. And you know, I've certainly done that once or twice myself, so sorry for anyone who is offended by that, but I've also done plenty of times going back and helping people get back on the group, so I think I'm okay. In any event, it is worthy of a discussion. So our team has certainly gotten some flack over the years for maybe having too hard of a ride or too inconsistent of a ride, and there's another ride in our area that's definitely much more disciplined on pace lines. And you know, I've done that ride plenty of times and it's a great workout, but at the same time it just doesn't really simulate racing the way that I need it to, for me to try to even be close to successful in my racing. So the strategy that I'm hoping the team develop this year is that we're making our Tuesday ride an all-out race simulation, and we're having our Thursday ride become a little bit more of a disciplined paceline approach. So, you know, the more I've thought about this, pacelining is great for getting people into the sport and introducing them to the tactics and etiquette of riding in a group. But when you've got that down, at some point, if you're going to be a racing cyclist, you really need to get that ramped up intensity, holding the wheel longer than you think you possibly could, and getting your doors blown off from time to time and getting dropped out in the middle of nowhere, because that is really what makes you a stronger cyclist. So it isn't always fun. But we're going to look at the group ride that we have on Tuesday, and it's definitely got more of a attacking style where people will go off the front. It's still cooperative, like we're not necessarily guttering each other, and you know, it's a pretty small group of those of us in the area that are doing that ride at the moment, so you know, you can't be too aggressive, and not that you can be, because I felt like I was going to get dropped 2 or 3. My opinion is this: I think both types of rides have a place. I also think historically cyclists tend to remember the great things about years past, and not necessarily that they had screwed up group rides plenty of times when they were in charge or when they were leading the pack. So I think there's a bit of romanticism to how things used to be versus how they are now. I doubt that it's too terribly different, but in any event, if it is different, I'm okay with that, because I like to have that attacking style race so I can simulate that type of intensity and that leg speed that I need when I'm racing. It's pretty rare that I'm in a breakaway for an hour and a half like a Paceline ride would simulate, so that's not something I really need. I need to hang on for dear life and try to pull myself together for a sprint at the end. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I'll break down a couple moments on the Tuesday ride and a couple moments on the Thursday ride, and I hope you can chime in with your thoughts. Certainly always interested in making cycling better in any way that I can here locally, or you know, if anyone else out there in the rest of the world is listening too. So that's it. Talk to you soon. Okay, the Tuesday ride. Here's the rules. Pretty much there are no rules. The first 10 minutes is neutral. We reach a certain point in the road. Everyone knows where that is. And then the gun sounds, essentially we're off to the races. So it's about a 30-mile effort of attacking or doing whatever you want to do. And then there's 2 major sprint points. After the first sprint, we'll wait. After the second sprint, we kind of neutral it back into the shop. That's really it. So I have found that this ride has been really low stress, because no one's trying to control anyone else's behavior. So it just makes it really, really low stress. I mean, it's high stress physically, but there's no social or political pressure on the rider. So it's been a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get some more people out there. I'm gonna get into the first couple moments of the ride that are difficult. Actually, that was Adam. That's our first casualty, falling off the back. So I think that was just a case of not quite warming up enough. So that's important on this ride too, to get a little bit of a spin in the legs. So we do have a couple minutes of neutral rollout, and then after my little show in the front, here I am resting and resting and resting some more. So
We're progressing now to this grinder of a hill. This is still, you can see the duration, 5 minutes. Not quite the total ride time. I started the camera a little bit late, so we're probably about 15 minutes into the ride. So going into this grinder, strategically, I make a not wise choice here and come to the front. So I'm pouring out watts here, and this is after I already had a little bit of an effort before. So not a great move, but you know, what do? You're here for a workout. It's not a race. That's an important difference. It is still a ride, still training. There's no winner on this ride, so keep that in mind. So that's pouring still lots of watts for me. Now I'm going to have to recover from this effort. I'm going to have to rest, and finally somebody comes around here, and then my only thing on my mind at this point is to work myself to the back as quickly as possible and hang out there for as long as I can. So we got to get over this grinder before I can get a little bit of a rest, and that is my plan. So we will see what happens here. I do the voiceovers in a one shot, so sometimes it's a surprise to me what's going to happen. Alright, a little respite, and I want to say there's going to be an attack here. In that yellow bike is Mr. Brent. I think he's going to put a little hurt on us here. Yep, there he goes. So now I am juiced already from my previous effort, so my thought here is I try, but there's not much I can do about that. So yeah, so I'm not going to be the one to staple that back. And I think where an attacking type of ride, this is where you have to be smart with your abilities. So I could have chased that and gotten dropped, I guarantee it, but I decided to let it go. Alright, now we are going to show, I think this is where Garrett, the person in the lead right there, the black and white kit, he's going to have a little difficulty here. So he got used to close most of that gap, and then when we got close, we all shot off him. And he didn't grab those wheels when they were coming around. And now you see his head bobbing, he's weaving a little bit, he's having a hard time keeping up. So strategically, you know, I know he was gassed, but grabbing one of those wheels on the way around would have been the right way to handle that. Garrett's a little bit newer to the sport, so super strong rider. He will get dropped here in a moment, but that is strictly because he is still learning some of the dynamics of group rides, and this group ride admittedly is a little bit different. So it's, again, just what are you truly capable of and staying within your limits, and not succumbing to the pressure of what a group ride would normally dictate, that you close gaps and try not to leave any open in the first place. But this ride is definitely a little bit different. So I think that's Dan on the front giving us a dig. Yeah, and then there's an attack, and that's the end of Garrett. So. Alright, now we're rolling through what we call the swamp, which is a road that's usually closed in the winter because it's so rough, and it doesn't get much better in the spring. So this road is really, really rough. This is me about to get dropped. So we usually have a little bit of a cease of arms during this section, but you know, it's a Tuesday ride, so you can do whatever you want. And there's a couple guys on the front that are pushing a little bit harder than I'm capable of. Now I've separated, so I'm putting out 300 watts. Thankfully, right there, I was toast. But I saw the group slow down for a second, and I gave it one more effort to latch on, and that was helpful. So, thank you. Alright, so we're pounding up this hill. We've turned directions now. The wind is this little section, and then we're going to get a tailwind. So this hill is a kind of a kick in the stones. And this is going to cost me some effort. Lots of watts, lots of watts, lots of watts. No attacking on this hill, but enough to definitely leave a dent. Alright, now I think we have the tailwind. This is Dan, really strong rider. He was in one of my previous race videos too, so really enjoyed this is actually my first group ride with Dan, so look at those watts that I am holding his wheel with 500 watts. That's just madness to me. I am dying here. So we have a tailwind finally, and Dan is just giving us the business, man. That was hurting. So, okay, here we are, a little fast forward moment, getting ready for, there's a sprint point coming up. So we get a pretty reasonable tailwind going here, and a little bit of teamwork, quote-unquote teamwork for the Tuesday ride. And then, all right, we'll slow it down for the actual lead out. Now I am gassed from that effort earlier from Dan, and I did another pull right before this sprint point, and I'm just not feeling it tonight, that's for sure. So you see where I need to be is right on Brent's wheel right there, but I just can't do it. Dan pulls the lead out there, and Brent would have cooked me obviously anyway, but I just couldn't grab that wheel to save my life, so be it. So that's the sprint point. Now we'll regroup after the sprint, is our Tuesday tradition, and then we'll dig on back. So there's one more sprint point coming up. Someone at this point said that they were tired, or there's too much talking going on, I believe is the comment, and of course that generated an attack from Johnny up the road, and this one hurt more than you might think. So all right, now we're coming into the final sprint, and I got a decent dig at this one finally. I struggle with this sprint. It's an overpass. There's just enough hill on this one to disrupt me, and it's a long pull into the sprint, and I always seem to struggle with the timing of this one. But tonight I finally got a pretty decent crack at it. So all right, we'll slow it down. I'm sorry, this is actually normal speed, and I believe that's Andrew Smits on the front that's giving us a lead out. Brent, who's the star of the show sprinting wise on this ride, and Johnny. And there was a little bit of a discussion about where this sprint is supposed to end, so you'll see that here in a second. So there goes Johnny, and I'm on his wheel, which is great, but I just don't have the power to come around. Just can't do it. So Johnny and I were racing for this sign over to the right, and Mr. Brent was racing for the expansion joint of the bridge. So there you go. So we had a little talk about where that actually ends. So now we slow roll back into the shop. So nice and easy peasy. Have a few beers afterwards. Great times. That is the Tuesday ride. All right, now the Thursday ride is again a neutral rollout to get to where we belong, out in the country where there's no cars. So just for anyone who doesn't live in our area that is watching this, we probably get passed by maybe 2 cars per training ride, something like that, when we get out to the country. So it's a pretty delightful place to live and ride bikes, that's for sure. So here we're picking up our friend out on the road. And this is the point where the neutral ends, so we're going to get started here on our Paceline. And this video is really simple. There's just a lot of pacelining, which is great. So it was a good workout. Again, I just want to be clear, no problems with disciplined pacelining. It was a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. It seems like it's a much better camaraderie type of moment. But definitely the workout was not as intense for me, and you know, you're sort of at the mercy of the folks you're riding with on a Paceline group ride. So nothing wrong with that. That's just how it is. So again, it's great for building the sport, getting people into it, teaching them the rules, tactics, etiquette, traditions of the sport. But in terms of getting that snap you need for racing, I think I need that. Me personally, I really need that race simulation type of effort, which we were getting on Tuesday. So I got it on fast forward because it's just a lot of this, miles and miles and miles of this, which is fun, but it's hard to narrate over. So we can go through more details on group riding, but yeah, this is pretty much it. This is how it works. Or I'm sorry, Paceline, but this is how it works. So typically the rule of thumb is you get to the front and you back it off by about a half a mile per hour. And then someone will come around you, and you do need to adjust your speeds and power for hills, uphill and downhill. So if a group says we're going to try to aim for 20, well, I think this ride was advertised as 22 to 27, which we were pretty much in that whole time. Yeah, that's how you have to do it. So I tended to watch my speed, my speedometer, more than any other metric when I was on the ride to make sure that we were being nice and consistent with the speed. Later on, talked to another rider, and he focuses on this power number more, but the power number just is more difficult for me to work with when I'm with a group than just the speed number. So to each his own. So this is the first chunk of the ride that we're having a Paceline effort here, and there are a group of riders behind us, and we'll get up to a stop sign here and we'll regroup with those riders that were having a harder time. So they were what we call the 8-ball. There's somebody in the back who's the link between those who are doing the pacelining and those who are more or less hanging on, which is great. There's no problem with that. It's helpful when that link is the same person, so when you're pacelining you get back to the back and you understand that it's your time to go. So yeah, so here we have a little minor split up with the group. Some people took the short route, some people took the long route. That's the nice part of our area. There's just a bunch of squares, so if you're dying you can always take a shortcut. So yeah, more pacelining here. We switched directions because the wind changed. So now we're going counterclockwise, and usually that's called out after we make a turn. And we'll see where we go after this turn. If we're back to clockwise, I think we're going to stay counterclockwise. Yep. Alright, so now we're gearing up for a sprint point. And I get my doors blown off again, and again by Mr. Brent. So, yep, there's the sprint. We had a tailwind here and I was geared out, so I was 53.11 full sprint and just tried to shift, didn't shift, and then that threw me off. So I'm out. That's that. So we're sprinting for that stop ahead sign. So now we are going to regroup after that sprint, which is the Thursday thing to do, is definitely have some more times of peace and quiet where other riders can jump on and recuperate a little bit. So that's just the vibe with Thursday. So we're not trying to kill people, we're trying to build the sport, trying to keep a nice consistent paceline. So what do you do if somebody doesn't necessarily want to do that at that particular moment? No knock on them as a person, it's just sometimes people feel a little froggy, as it were. So I think there's going to be a moment of that coming up. So Mr. Brent here ahead of me crashed in a race recently, so he's got tons of fitness, but he's been forced to be off the bike for a bit. So here Brent is going a little over where I think we should be doing for this group. So we're at 34 miles an hour, and my strategy here is to let him bake, and unfortunately I have to bake myself a bit too. But I'm communicating to Brent without saying a word that if I'm not coming around, there's a reason. And then he'll back off here a little bit, I hope, and then I can come around. And this prevents the ride from being blown up. Whereas typically, if you're suffering in the spot that I was in, you would dive behind Brent to get some coverage, and then that's what leads to the ride being broken up because you lose the paceline. So fortunately, I can handle that spot for a minute at least and make my communications clear that that's not what we need to be doing right now. So no problem, that happens. All right, now there's a final sprint point, and I'm in a great spot, but I just don't have the juice to do it. So I'm going to ride on Andrew's lead out here for as long as I possibly can. And he's going to start to fade on the speed just a hair, and at that point I'm too far from the sprint, but I don't really have a choice because I know Brent is on my wheel. So the only choice I have is to just give her. So I do that, and it doesn't work. Brent comes right around me like a bullet, has time to even look at me. Yep, see you, buddy. And then he just takes off. So it actually ended up being sort of a perfect lead out practice for Brent to win a race, unfortunate for me. So we have one more little cheeky sprint coming up. These guys all said, well, let's do a sprint with staying seated, no standing. I didn't get that message. So I'm about to take off for the stop ahead sign, but I stand up. So total cheater. But watch my power, is interesting physiologically. I get great power on this sprint because it's so rested going into it that those other two sprint points I got like 1100 tops. This one hit over 1300. So just a difference in the way things work. All right, so now we're neutral back to the shop. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So that is the Thursday ride. Okay, so what's the moral of the story? Well, on the Tuesday ride, my normalized power was 281, and on the Thursday ride, my normalized power was 260. So maybe a little bit less than a 10% difference in my personal power output. Very similar distance, very similar time frames, pretty similar terrain as well. The Tuesday ride, I feel, is what I need to execute a race properly, to get the speed in the legs, to get that experience of suffering to the point of wanting to give up. I need that. And on the Thursday ride, I never had that feeling. However, on the Thursday ride, I had fun and felt like I wasn't about to drop a lung on the side of the road. So I think each ride has their place. I particularly like the way that we're going about having two different types of rides. The Thursday ride, again, it's great to get people in the sport, teach them how it works. The Tuesday ride is for folks that have accomplished what they need to accomplish in terms of learning how the sport works, but just really need that extra effort. So every once in a while you get an exception to that case where somebody's just really fit from other sports. So why it's taken place over the last couple of years, I really don't know. But I guess I would say this. A lot of it is about managing expectations. So I think when someone shows up to a group ride and they expect it to be a nice even pace line and it's not, that is frustrating for them, and it's frustrating for the group, and it leads to just an overall bad experience. But if the group ride is properly communicated, then I think you have a chance to manage those expectations properly, and people show up with the right mindset, knowing what's going to happen. So with our technology, being able to give somebody a route through their Garmin, or they can load the route, or whatever the case is, everybody's got a cell phone, you know, it's not as big of a deal to drop somebody out in the country, and most of these folks are very familiar with these roads, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I don't know. I just think each ride has its place. Comment below, like, subscribe, and next week starts Tour of America's later this week starts Tour of America's Dairyland, and I'll try to upload those race videos as quickly as I can, and I will be racing in the Masters 1, 2, 3 category, and we'll see how it goes. I have zero expectations of myself. I'm just going to go have fun and race my bike. That's it for today.